Will the makers of tomorrow please stand up? Because tomorrow is approaching. The ones who dare to see the future. The ones who take plans out of WhatsApp groups. A fearless bunch. Are you? See, success is not microwavable. Dreams don't just come true. There's a difference between those who become and those who don't. Trust. There's always a better choice. And the better the choice, the better your chances. So choose to make the better choice. Like the choice to create, not just online, but also in real life. The choice to speak out, no matter the social cost. Or the choice to just be, because that too is allowed. But tomorrow is approaching, and we need the makers of tomorrow to make the better choice. And that starts with saying no to underage drinking.
Good morning, everyone. We are so pleased to have you here. Welcome to the Aware No to Under 18 webinar, the first of its kind. We are very happy to have you here and to have you here in good numbers. So thank you very much for the support. My name is Mokebe Tulo, and I am the CEO of Aware. Today, you can expect a world of information around underage drinking. Aware.org is an organization that I'm sure all of you are familiar with. It is an organization that is the alcohol industry harm reduction leg. If you can go to the next slide. So what we do at Aware is that we ensure that our population of people are able to enjoy alcohol responsibly in the event that they can drink, and in the event that they are not able to drink, as is in the case of our underage youth as well as our sober individuals, then they do not drink. How we do this is through making sure that people are aware of the right things to do, through creating messages of awareness and education around the problems, and through the programmatic work that we do on the ground every day of the year. Our vision and mission is that we are committed to leading harm reduction and promoting responsible drinking in South Africa by integrating behavioral science, data, local and global best practices. And we aim to inspire sustainable behavior change and create lasting impact. And of course, it is absolutely not possible to do that without you. So one of our key pillars and the most important of our pillars is what we are talking about today, and that is underage drinking. Aware is a national footprint. We have a national footprint and exist in all of the regions within South Africa, as you can see in the map before you. As I mentioned, we have three key pillars that we work under, which is no to under 18, don't drink and drive, as well as sober pregnancies. And what we are aiming to do is to increase the knowledge from a mass point of view in order to put South African individuals in the best position that they can be. A little bit more about our underage program specifically. We do a lot of work on the ground with a number of the partners that you can see on this slide. In terms of No to Under 18, we work with the likes of course, the provincial and national government. We work with implementation partners such as Alta Sport, United Through Sport, School of Hard Knocks, Kimoja. And these are just a few. Of course, Sanka being the largest of these partners. Moving on. Our key audience, of course, is our 9 to 17-year-olds, and it is surprising often to people when they hear that we start engaging with the youth as young as 9, but that is because that is the age at which young people start to experiment with alcohol. We, of course, understand that this is a holistic problem, and that in order for us to deal with any of these problems, we have to engage with what we call the whole of society. And therefore, we don't only focus on our youngsters, we also focus on their families and the schools, and the communities in which they live. We work very closely, as I said, with the government departments involved in these areas, as well as the liquor boards, in order for us to be able to run our program successfully. And how we do it is that we try to seize this problem at all angles. So from creating recreational opportunities for young people, because we know the old saying about idle minds, idle hands. We work in schools because we know that, and the research backs us, you will see, that this is where we have captive audiences and that young people generally trust the information that they get in these spaces. We, of course, need to reach large numbers of young people, and this is where our mass media efforts come in. And then, of course, the ones that are lost in between need help, and that is where the rehabilitation leg of the work that Aware does comes in. We are very pleased with our numbers and successes over the years, and we have in fact just released our annual report. If you would like to see it, it is available on the aware.org website. But this is just a snapshot of it. We work with 8 implementation partners with over 200 youth enrolled in one of our programs. We've held a round table, which was last year with a number of our stakeholders. The most recent MOU, and we have a number of MOUs with various partners, has been with the Eastern Cape Liquor Board. From a research point of view, most of the research you will see today is the research that we've done in the past 5 years. But of course, we continuously do research within our programs as we run them on the ground with our partners, as well as engage in desktop research and look at what global best practice is. And over the past year, we've reached nearly 130,000 young people within our programs. And so today we are very pleased to present this research to you. We hope that you will find it very interesting and that you will find it very insightful. And mostly, whether or not you engage in any communications or any practices throughout the value chain related to our youth, that you keep this information in mind when we do the work that we do, because it is important. Please note that we do have a Q&A session at the end of this presentation. So you are welcome to type up questions as we go through the presentation. As they come up, you don't have to wait until the end to type up your questions in the chat, and we will get to as many of the questions as we possibly can. The one exciting bit is that we've got poll questions that will be coming up throughout the presentation. And of course, that means that we have a competition and winners. So if you answer all the questions correctly, you stand in line to win a really exciting gift to be announced. So thank you once again for being here. We really appreciate your support, and we hope that you take as much as you can out of the session. Over to you, John.
Thank you, Mokebe. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Yeah, my name is John Moorman. I'm lead for sustainable social research at Frontline Research South Africa. Very grateful to have worked together with Dev and Mokebe on this project. I'm going to take us through some of the results. And maybe just to keep in mind, I'm a researcher, so I get very passionate about this research that we've done. As Mokebe also indicated, we'll be putting some poll questions and question and answers at the end. Yeah, I'm going to take us through some of the results that we got from this research. Firstly, maybe just to get the flow of the presentation, we're going to start with some of the background and objectives, where the research came from, when we were approached by Aware, then basically how we did the research, all the nitty-gritty and the methodology parts of the research process. Then we go into the general behavior and perceptions of teens in South Africa, looking specifically at attitudes and the impact on their own behavior. Then specifically the focus of the research was on the programs and initiatives that Aware runs. So we're going to look at awareness of the programs, evaluate some specific campaigns, not going into too much detail of the implementing partners, and then just a short summary. So first, the background objectives. Aware commissioned this research at the end of last year, really to look at the campaigns and the harm reduction programs and how teens are perceiving these programs, specifically for the purpose of tailoring the programs, looking at the initiatives and how it can be tailored to address specifically, obviously, the needs of what we identified as the 11 to 17-year-olds in South Africa. So first off, maybe it's not an evaluation research, it's not an incidence research, it's something that was designed for us to look at the detail of the programs and to be able to compare where Aware is running, its implementing partners are running programs compared to what we consider a general population of 11 to 17-year-olds. So we created a slightly different approach in that we split the study into two parts. We conducted a baseline study of 11 to 17-year-olds that was conducted online. I'm going to go into the details now. Together with that, we also did a targeted survey, a face-to-face survey, where we went to respondents in their homes, in their areas, in their communities where they live, specifically targeting geographic areas where Aware.org's implementing partners are running specific programs, things like the School of Hard Knocks, United Through Sport, etc. We were looking specifically at the messaging. So these are more focusing on how the messaging is perceived and how the messaging is driving behavior in South Africa among this target market, and how the messaging can be adjusted, how it can speak to the needs of teens in South Africa, how it can resonate with the target market. The objectives really was for us to understand to what extent are adolescents or teens aware of the harm reduction initiatives, overall harm reduction initiatives? Do they understand the program, the intent of these programs? What is their perception of these programs? And then really to go into specifically, how do they associate? What do they associate with these programs? What are the key things, looking at from the Aware.org's perspective, that works and that doesn't work? Furthermore, we went into specific interventions and campaigns. So we looked at the Aware.org campaigns, how the messaging was received, how does it resonate, and then specifically, we also looked at the implementing partners campaigns, how these are perceived, what the perceived benefits and what the perceived shortcomings might be, and what the needs of the teens in these areas are. So it's a little bit different from normal research. We look at it from an attitudinal perspective, really, and a behavioral aspect. So it's a lot of information to share, and I'm going to go take us through a little bit. First off, the methodology. So for the baseline survey, this is the one that we conducted online. We recruited the parents or the guardians online and asked them for permission to interview or have their child or the person that lives with them to complete a survey online. So we scripted the survey, we sent it to potential respondents, the parents and the guardians, and after they gave us consent, we asked them to provide their child with the device or to forward the link to that extent and to complete the survey themselves. So we scripted a survey. It looks something like this, where they can choose themselves the relevant answers. This was done just after the school holidays before Christmas. So we sent out 16,000 invitations, online invitations. Obviously, not everyone's responding. We had some people screening out. We removed some quality respondents. We looked at the IPs and the duplicates, all the kind of research stuff that we need to make sure that the research is not necessarily representative, but that it's clean and it's a fair representation of the target that we were looking for. We ended up with 512 respondents in the online database. So a response rate of almost 20%, good conversion rates, good success rates. This is in line with what we expect, and we ended up with 512. And throughout the presentation, you'll be able to see when we refer to specific components or the specific two streams, you'll see that the gray blocks here refer to the online survey. And then if we talk to the face-to-face survey, it's going to be the orange. So just how to read it. For the online survey, who did we speak to? We spoke to 512 respondents, like we said, pretty decent gender split, slightly more girls than boys. All the provinces represented. Basically, we had specific quotas to make sure that we got sufficient respondents in all the major provinces. We didn't really have to apply these quotas to make sure that we can have a spread of the more populous provinces, but it's a good spread at the end of the day. Also, in terms of the ages, split over the different ages. We only spoke to teens, and I only spoke to households that have teens between the ages of 11 and 17. Good representation in terms of the different population groups, even though we didn't not target on that specifically. Overall, what we found, and I'm going to go into the details now, is that overall 85% we do not consume alcohol regularly, and 12% do consume alcohol regularly. For the face-to-face survey, what we've done is a bit slightly different. So we coordinated with Devashani on the different programs and the initiatives that Aware.org is running. And we went to those specific communities. So first off, what we did is we looked at the different geographies, in this case, where the implementing partners were busy running their programs. And then we randomly selected households in that specific geographic area. So we said, look, go to the specific area, go to a specific household. We identified the household, you knock on the door, ask if there's someone in the household who's 11 to 17-year-old, obviously of the guardian. If yes, then we asked them if we could conduct a survey with one of their children randomly selected. And if they said yes and they signed the consent form, then we obviously in person went to the respondent, the teen in this case, and we completed a survey. It was done between 3 and 24 December. It was also convenient for us to do it after the school holidays. Obviously, considering the targets and the geographies where we were talking to the respondents, these are specific areas that was highlighted for the implementing partners as areas that and maybe just to put it in context, sometimes it's a more challenging areas. So from a socio-demographic perspective, it wasn't necessarily high income areas, more problematic kind of social environments that we talked to. And we did 5 interviews for each and every point. So at the end of the day, we ended up with slightly more. We were targeting 625 surveys. And at no point did we ever ask anyone for identifiable information. So we tried to be safe in this perspective. We don't have the name of the respondent. We did not even call back. We recorded all the interviews for our quality assurance and ended up, like I said, with 625. So who did we speak to face to face? Very similar, 57% girls, 43% boys. Obviously, we talk about self-reported alcohol consumption, slightly higher than compared to the baseline survey that was conducted online. Similar distribution when it comes to population group. We spoke to an equal split, about 150 odd respondents for each of the different programs. So it was for Kemoja in Johannesburg, United 3 Sports in Nelson Mandela Bay, School of Hard Knocks in Cape Town and surrounds, and Alta Sport in Johannesburg and Tshwane. I'm not going to show this in the presentation, but we did go into detailed analysis of the different initiatives and the different programs and how the relationship between harm reduction programs and these specific implementing partner programs, how they play out. We ended up with very similar, slightly higher proportion of the 17-year-olds. The idea was for us then to be able to compare these results. And I'm going to go through the impact now. Pierre, if we could maybe show the first poll question at this stage, I think it would be useful to ask some of the questions. So when we look at the general, so first off, we started with the general questions, understanding where the teen's coming from, what are their perceptions, how do they operate, what are the things that they do on a daily basis. So for each of the different questions, each of the different slides, I'm just going to maybe just take us through some of the way the slides are interpreted. If it's online survey, it's a little gray block. We cannot combine the results due to the different methodologies, due to the different sampling methodologies. Similar questions were asked, but obviously in a slightly different manner. So we're always going to show it separately. So the first question that we ask everyone, was, have you or your friends ever had a drink containing alcohol? Now, these are not questions that maybe, again, this is not an instance survey. So we structured the questions in a user-friendly manner to ask it in a non-threatening manner, really just to get a sense and to start off with a sense of where are they coming from? What are they doing? So about slightly less than 41 in 4 in 10 indicated that they ever consumed alcohol. Okay, so it's 38%. Typically, what we also see is that as they get older, they are more likely to have ever consumed alcohol, which makes perfect sense. We also asked, so, if you do consume alcohol, how often do you or your friends drink alcohol? And for 65% of those who said that they've ever tried any alcohol use, said that they've only tried it once or twice. So we said, okay, fine, that's not really what we're going to count towards our incidence of teens consuming alcohol. And we looked at 23%, less than a month, 8% a few times a week, 1%, etc., etc. So at the end of the day, we're looking at approximately 12% that said that they're consuming alcohol. Now, on a regular basis, i.e., at least once a month or more. When we go to the face-to-face survey, this was done in the areas where the implementing partners are busy, we got a very similar result, which is fantastic. So 38%, 37% just gives us a sense of, okay, so the incidence, generally speaking, seems to be about a third of teens in this age group said that they've consumed alcohol or tried, ever had a drink containing alcohol. And as per the online survey, it also goes up. Incidence of the teens trying alcohol increases as age decreases. It's more visible here than an online survey. But only a third, compared to 65% for the online survey, indicated that they've only tried it once or twice. With the specific target, when the face-to-face survey in these geographic areas, you can see that it's a lot more, the consumption seems to be more regular, with a quarter about saying that they drink once a month or less, another quarter a few times a month, 1 in 10 a few times a week, etc., etc. So it's definitely a sense of that in these specific geographic areas that alcohol consumption among teens is more likely. And what we end up is a general percentage, maybe just to go back, 25% of one of four of the face-to-face survey indicated that they drink alcohol regularly versus 12% for the online survey. Then we asked them, so what's something fun or interesting you enjoy doing during your free time? And typically what we see is that the most popular activities is media driven. So it's typically listening to music, watching TV or series or movies, playing video games, chatting with friends on social media platforms, etc., etc. About a third indicating that they play sports either on a team or or individually. So what this take out for us here is that, yes, teens, and I can confess as a parent of teens myself, is that they love watching media. They consume media a lot. They consume online media. They don't consume media in the way that we used to in the olden days. And slightly more when we talk to the targeted sample that's involved in the sports programs, mostly sports programs, slightly more to say that they want to participate in sports. But it's still less than what the WHO recommends with, they say 60 minutes per day, but we see lower with maybe, lower sports activities, more media compared to what we would ideally like to see. And they tend to socialize with friends, more so for the face-to-face compared to the online sample that we spoke to. Socializing with friends is an activity that's more acute for the specific target. And this also gives us a sense of maybe social components might play a big role in this kinds of behavior. But this is all just background for us to understand where the teens are coming from. Non-drinkers, and now I'm going to split it also for most of the slides between those who do say that they consume alcohol regularly or not consuming alcohol regularly. And what we typically see is that if teens indicate that they do consume alcohol regularly, their school enjoyment decreases. So they're more likely to say that they integrate it into school compared to those who do drink, we typically tend to say that they don't enjoy school. So this has some implications also for programs that are implemented through school and through the education system, which we'll see happens quite a lot. So then the next bit, we asked them specifically about their attitudes. So we explained to them what we're going to do, and we asked them a series of questions, whether they agree or not agree. So first question, for example, when do you need help? When you need help or advice, who do you normally turn to? And what we do see is that social structures, if teens are not consuming alcohol regularly, that they tend to show that their social structures or their support structures are more in place generally. Not that teens who do consume alcohol do not engage with their social structures in home, but the support structures are generally more likely to be there if they're not consuming alcohol. So, for example, an online survey for those who say that they consume alcohol, the orange bits, see that it's lower for those who say that they rely on their parents. They tend to rely more on their friends or their peers, their siblings, compared to all the authority figures, for that lack of a better word. Same thing for the face-to-face survey, where if they are already consuming alcohol, that they tend to rely more on their social structures and their peers than others. So already this gives us an indication that we might need to look at specifically, like Mokebe said, including the family, including the parents, including the other role players in the situation, because it does play a role and it does have an impact on behavior and where teens are going to look for the support that they would want to have. And it's not just about at home, it's also about at school. And when we ask, for example, how often do you feel pressure from friends to do things that you're not comfortable with, we typically see that the respondents that we spoke to in the online survey are much more likely to indicate that they experience peer pressure. Now, also boys are more likely to say that they see peer pressure compared to girls, and it does speak as they become that socially awkward stage. They tend to be more impacted by peer pressure, and it goes, obviously slightly less as they get a bit older. And the support structures at home as well. So what you typically see is that if they do consume alcohol, that they tend to talk less, that they tend to integrate, or they speak less, engage less with family members, whether it's siblings or guardians or parents, compared to those who do not consume alcohol. Interesting also, younger respondents, those 11 to 12-year-olds, and girls are more likely to talk to their parents, their guardians, or their peers, their siblings at home, if they've got different issues or things, compared to boys and compared to older teens. So typically, already what in our mind, okay, so age makes a difference. Younger teens might have slightly different needs than older teens. Peer pressure plays a role. So then we gave them a bunch of statements. So we said, please tell us how much you agree or disagree with these statements. There are no right or wrong answers, just share your honest thoughts. We gave them a battery of statements. So things like, it's important for teens like me to say no to alcohol if they don't want to drink. It's unsafe for young people like me to drink alcohol. It makes me hard to focus on school. It's important, to talk about alcohol, dangers of alcohol with friends. So in terms of the general statements that we think about when teens involved in education programs. And what we see is a very high proportion of teens that say that they agree with these statements typically. So in our minds, it says, okay, so cognitively and from a knowledge perspective, generally speaking, teens seem to indicate, at least when we ask them explicitly, that they understand these messages and they agree with these messages. Similarly, like we saw in terms of the peer pressure, you can see that the online survey respondents, the ones that we spoke to online, are more likely to report that they're experiencing peer pressure. And again, to some extent, that leads us to the online exposure that teens are experiencing and the fact that teen or peer pressure is more likely to happen in an online environment. Maybe teens are more exposed. So something to keep in mind when we look at this as well. So on a typical day, and this is a question that we only ask for those who said that they consume alcohol and they consume it regularly or at least once a month or more. We ask them specifically, so on a typical day, how much do how much drinks do you usually have, right? So we need to also maybe contextualize this in terms of we're talking to 11 to 17-year-olds, but how they're likely to respond to this. But what we typically see is that for the targeted survey, which was done face to face, they're more likely to drink more in each occasion than those who we conducted the general population in a way that we spoke to online. And where do you people your age usually drink alcohol? So this is further evidence for us to suggest that there's a very big peer influence or social influence when it comes to alcohol consumption for 11 to 17 years. Almost half of them indicated that when teens their age consume alcohol, it happens at parties. It happens when they're hanging out with friends on special occasions. Not so much at family events or at home, etc. But there's a social imperative or social component to consuming alcohol that becomes explicit, and it happens on the peer level. It tends to happen. Yes, there's a home situations. Yes, but it tends to be a social environment and a social indication when teens do drink alcohol. Generally speaking, experimentation with also increases with age. And like we said, obviously for boys are more likely to indicate that they do consume alcohol, obviously, and boys as well. So secondly, then we're going to look at brand awareness. So in brand research, when we speak to brands, typically we want to understand how visible is the campaign, how visible is the brand. And we used a similar approach where we literally ask respondents, in this case, the teens, to indicate to us, so, what they have experienced, what they have seen. So first off, we explain to them what is a program or a campaign, a little readout that we gave to them or something that can show on the screen, that they can understand what a program or a campaign is. And then the first question really was, have you heard or seen any programs or campaigns that try to address underage drinking? For the online survey, we had almost 2 out of every 3 that indicated that they have seen some campaign or program that tried to address underage drinking. And keep in mind, this is a very general. So they don't know at this stage that it's aware. They don't understand that it's done for anyone at this point. And then we asked them specifically to mention the campaigns out of their own words. So 16%, the bulk of them, obviously in this case, mentioned that they experienced the program or campaign at school or church. And then different things come. Love Life came up, the No to Under 18 campaign came up, Arrive Alive, or as I said, drinking and driving campaigns, drug and substance abuse, Sanka, implementing partners such as Kemoja, aware.org, spontaneously was mentioned by some respondents. And what we see in the specific campaigns that the teens highlighted for us is that it seems to be a little bit, how can I say, fragmented. Some of the, you see things like Soul Buddies and Alcohol Think Again. Even campaigns that are not in South Africa, online campaigns, social media campaigns that might be international campaigns that come from Europe or even from America or Australia. So already this tells us that from a teen's perspective, there's a lot of different messaging coming into their social media feeds, and onto specifically, obviously, when they consume media like that it talks to a lot of different things. So already in their minds, except for programs at school or church, it's disparate. Different messaging, different campaigns, different information will come through to them from different sources. So what we also see is that typically the older respondents, so about 71% of 17-year-olds indicated that they have experienced such a campaign or is aware of such campaigns. And it generally tends to be more likely that respondents indicated yes, that they were based in Gauteng, Eastern Cape, or the Western Cape. For the face-to-face survey, lower proportion of respondents that indicated it's only 41%. But here it comes very clear that the implementing partners, so Kimoja came out 20%. So almost all of them mentioned that program at school or church, yes. And then the implementing partners, Altus, Aware.org, 7%, No to Under 18, 6%, SAB programs come up, Scheme SOM, 4%, Sanka. So it's very similar that we experienced previously. But what we also see is that these implementing partner programs that Aware.org is working with in the different provinces is integrated in the teens' lives to the extent that when we ask them this, they can randomly mention the programs, not randomly, spontaneously mention the programs. So there is already a sense of that it is integrated in these communities, and they understand that there are different harm reduction programs that's provided to them. Overall, generally, we see that obviously it increases with age, and boys are also more likely to indicate that they've seen such a harm reduction campaign, which might suggest, obviously, boys we know is more of a risk group in this instance, but there might be a potential gap in messaging that's for our female audiences. Then we went on specifically and asked, okay, so for those, where did you see or hear about this different program? So majority indicated that, obviously, from the face-to-face survey, that it was in school, specifically for younger respondents. So for the targeted survey, where we look at the respondents in those geographic areas where the implementing partners are running their programs, almost 60% indicated that they saw these campaigns at school. And it's typically for those who are younger, are more likely to indicate or recall those campaigns. And typically what we also see is that respondents who don't consume alcohol for the online survey was more likely to recall programs at home. Generally speaking, you're looking at school, and we talked about media, but television, for example, where people might see it. And this also could be the No to Under 18 campaign. And when we look at the open ends, it is prevalent. It's well known among respondents generally. And at community events or gatherings on social media like TikTok, etc., with 9% who said that they saw it on YouTube, specifically for the youngest group. This does raise a little bit of question for us to look at the media consumption and where teens are recalling these programs. So media consumption or activities tend to be focused on media consumption, but we tend to focus more on other environments specifically, things like school, the more structured environments. So maybe just keep that in mind when we look at some of the research that we're going to unpack later. And overall, what do you think these programs are trying to do? They could choose more than one answer in this instance, and the majority, the themes that came out specifically are education focused. So it's about understanding the risks of drinking alcohol. It's about sharing information about alcohol. It's how to help people avoid drinking alcohol, how to help people make smarter choices. And what I appreciate about this is that we tend to see that the respondents from the face-to-face survey, where the implementing partners are running their campaigns, maybe the focus is not so much on the education, but almost to say, look at the outcomes. Look at the outcomes of what these campaigns are doing, things like avoiding alcohol, how to make smarter choices. So education is key, and we can already see that education school environment is going to be a great source of this information. But there need to be maybe a bit of nuance, looking at specifically what kind of messaging teens are extracting from these campaigns. But they seem as helpful. I mean, this is, for me, is very encouraging when we ask the teens, so what do you think about these programs? So you tend to think of it when you go to schools and you see these programs being presented to teens, that they tend to be very skeptical of it, especially when they're older. But almost 80% of those who do not consume alcohol in online surveys said that they are very helpful. These campaigns or programs are very helpful. Even 71% for those who already consume alcohol regularly. Then to be a little bit more skepticism about from those who do consume alcohol. So when we look at the okay, but they don't make a big difference. A quarter of respondents indicated there, and about 5% overall said that they haven't really thought about it. When we look at the specific programs where for the face-to-face survey, you can see very similar, 69, 70% indicated that it's very helpful. But then the proportion of teens who indicated that they don't necessarily make such a big difference does increase compared to maybe some of the other campaigns where all the boys specifically are more likely to say that these campaigns are not working. And fully 16% that said that they haven't really thought about it when we look at the face-to-face campaign. So maybe there's a little bit of there's some disengagement when we look at these programs on a smaller geographic level. And then specifically, we went into the awareness and recall. How we did this was slightly different. We showed respondents, we said, have you ever seen this logo? And we literally showed them this, and they could choose either yes or no. For the online survey, almost 6 out of 10 said that they have seen it. The highest recall in this question was in the Western Cape. And the follow-up question, what do you think this organization is trying to do? And this, we split the sample into two. So half the respondents could type an answer, and the other half could select an answer from a limited number of close-ended options that we provided. And typically, they aligned quite well, with half the respondents saying that, of the teens saying that the purpose of Aware, in this case, is to help teens or help young people to avoid drinking alcohol. Secondly, also to teach them about the dangers of drinking alcohol, and then promoting healthier choices, make community safe. So typically what we tend to see is Aware is associated more with how to avoid the problem in the first place, i.e. a preventative role. So yeah, we got 6 out of 10 who said that they've seen the Aware logo. And again, when we bring in aware.org into this equation, it tends to be less focused here on education. So already in our minds, we're thinking, okay, so we're looking at school, we're looking at programs outside of school, and how do these programs talk to each other, and how do they impact the behavior of teens in South Africa? Then we ask them specifically if they know of any, or they're aware of any programs or campaigns specifically by Aware. Slightly less than half indicated that they were aware. And if they were aware, we asked them, or even if they're not aware of any specific campaigns, which of these have they seen? And we showed them the visuals of Makers of Tomorrow, Make the Better Choice, and No to Under 18. So if they are aware of campaigns, 77% of them, almost 3 out of 4, slightly more than 3 out of 4, indicated that they are aware of the No to Under 18 campaign, and even 37% of them recognized it, even if they said that they don't know of any Aware campaign. So the No to Under 18 is very well known, and there's a lot of reasons why. It's a lot of advertising. There's on social media. There's a lot of advertising, even in the manufacturers' adverts, and you can see it everywhere. So from a visibility perspective, it is really understood or seen by the majority of respondents. And for the face-to-face survey, when we asked them the same question, very similar. About half of them indicated that they have seen this logo from aware.org. And recognition was slightly higher among those who already consume alcohol. When it comes to the purpose of aware.org, it's very, very similar, with about slightly more than half saying that it's helping young people avoid drinking alcohol. And then it goes more into the knowledge and additional social constructs for this. So typically also that we see from respondents that live in those geographic areas where the implementing partners are busy, perceptions or recognition of aware is much higher, 70%, for example, where Alta Sports running. So for us, what it indicates, if they're involved in these structured programs already, that they're more likely to recognize the campaign branding, and the expected purpose is similar across all the demographic profiles. When you ask them about campaigns for the face-to-face survey, very similar, about slightly more than a third indicated that they know of Aware's campaigns, and 82% of them who indicated they know of Aware campaigns said that they know to under 18 versus some of the others. So Makers of Tomorrow, slightly lower, well, quite a lot lower recognition, and it's also linked to the fact that the No to Under 18 campaign is so well known and so structured for this respondents. So the Makers of Tomorrow recognition was a lot lower compared to the baseline. So we need to keep that in mind as well when we talk to the teens. Typically, then, what we circle back is to say, so what do you think these programs are trying to do? Specifically, the Aware programs. And what we see now is that it's not so much more focused on the education aspects, but what we see is slightly more focus on social areas or the social aspect of teen consuming alcohol. So, for example, saying how to say no to alcohol, i.e., social tools almost, or the toolbox that teens can have, 3/4 of them associated that with Aware, versus the risk of drinking alcohol. It decreases slightly, how it can affect future goals. So it tends to be maybe focusing more on healthy choices and peer support, but education, the risk of drinking alcohol, how to make healthy choices, etc., still plays a very prominent role. But there is already a slight shift of focus that we can see. So are these programs successful? Do they succeed in teaching teens like you about these things? Typically, we see a very good response from teens. So 8 out of 10 teens believe that it either succeeds, that the Aware.org programs succeed or somewhat succeed, with 6% believing that it doesn't. Right? So for the teens who do already consume alcohol, it is lower proportion of teens who say that they succeed, significantly more than in the baseline. You can see when the implementing partners or where the programs are being run, that the understanding of the success of these programs is higher. So what we want to maybe hypothesize at this stage is that the work that implementing partners are doing increases perceptions of the impact of Aware.org campaigns, and typically plays almost a conducive role in creating that awareness among teens of different programs and social structures that they can use to help them. And do you think that these programs are informative and relatable? Typically, what we see is that the majority of them, they say that it succeeds because it provides information clearly and usefully, but it also uses engaging methods. Even for those who do not consume alcohol, the campaigns are seen to be relevant. It's seen to be relatable. But if they already consume alcohol, the relevance is quite a bit lower. 13% is said that it doesn't feel relative to teens' lives when they consume alcohol, compared to 6% of those who said that they do not consume alcohol. And what we typically also see is similar kind of approach here. When they do consume alcohol, it is more difficult to engage with them. For example, the information is confusing or hard to understand, is higher. Relatability also tend to be higher for younger respondents, and for those already engaged in the implementing partner programs. So then we specifically went into the testing of specific campaigns and interventions. So we started off with the Makers of Tomorrow. Showed them the logo. Do you remember seeing the Makers of Tomorrow campaign? Yes or no? Almost half of them indicated that they have seen it for the online survey. And where did they see it? Typically social media. So we need to consider this, that when teens obviously consume in their spare time, they tend to consume media, and it tends to be in social media. So this is typically where they're most likely to recall. Then on things, other media, TV, YouTube, only 1 in 5 saying that they saw this at school. Also, teens that do not consume alcohol are more likely to say that they experienced it or saw this at school, and they're also more integrated at school. So, keeping in mind the education focus. When we did for the face-to-face survey, much lower. So only 17% indicated that they've seen the Makers of Tomorrow campaign, which makes sense. They're involved in other kinds of programs and not exposed to the same kind of social media that teens in the baseline experienced. So they tend to have more focus on traditional media, such as television, and it then becomes social media, and higher proportion of respondents who said that they saw this at school compared to the baseline survey, especially among younger teens. And I'm going to come back to this a few times, because what we tend to see is that education-focused programs, and run through schools or structured environments, church, for example, tend to resonate more with younger teens, whereas things that focus on social resilience, social skills, understanding peer pressure, skills in general, tend to resonate more with older respondents. So it's never going to be a one-size-fits-all approach. Then we also tested for Skeem Saam. So Skeem Saam is a program on television. We showed them the logo with where have you ever seen this program? For the online survey, 8 out of 10 indicated that they've seen Skeem Saam before. Yes, so it's a very popular kind of drama. Majority of them, we asked them to also rate it. 61% gave it 5 out of 5, 18 gave it 4 stars, 7, and so forth and so forth. So it is popular. And the kind of messaging and the kind of takeouts that teens recalled tend to be things like drinking under 18 is illegal. So the red or the slightly pink, I guess, categories tend to refer to more punitive kind of categories. So drinking under 18 is illegal. It can cause accidents or injuries. It can harm your brain. So it's not surprising really for something like Skeem Saam, which is a drama really. So it shows almost the really hazardous aspects and the dramatic aspects of alcohol use. So it makes sense that they can recall specifically the more punitive ones. But it tends to focus on other kind of aspects as well. So, for example, you don't need alcohol to have fun, or it's okay to say no to alcohol. But typically, it tends to be more punitive in nature than positive in nature. And for the face-to-face survey, slightly less, only 60% said that they've seen this program, but it's very, very similar. Drink can harm you, it's illegal, it's okay to say no to alcohol. The focus here is not as much on the punitive aspects as it is maybe for the online target market, which also suggests maybe there's some other things playing a role in terms of the day-to-day activities that the teens are experiencing. But the general takeouts seem to be very, very similar among the different target markets. And how would you describe the Makers of Tomorrow and Skeem Saam TV programs from Aware? So from a descriptive perspective, tend to be it's supportive because it seems to care about younger people. The supportive aspect does tend to resonate more with older teens. It's informative, so the education focus, yes, it is there, but also it's inspiring, it's relatable, it's engaging. And typically, what you see, and unexpectedly, this relatability would be lower among younger teens because of the more adult focus of these programs, both Scheme Som and the Makers of Tomorrow. They're seen as emphatic. It's seen as more than just information or more informative, and it seems to be more action-driven kind of messaging. So generally speaking, minimal perceptions of irrelevance or confusion. And what we typically see is that for the face-to-face survey specifically, the irrelevance, almost 1 in 10 said it doesn't really feel relevant to them, particularly for the mid-teens. So what we say, those 14-year-olds, where it seems to maybe drop off a little bit compared to either the younger teens who are looking for information, or the older teens who are looking for something that can have a social benefit almost in a way for them as they mature. But it resonates. It resonates on both an emotional and a rational level. So when we ask them, so what have they found the most interesting or memorable? It's about the real life stories. It's about, yes, it's also about the facts, but the highest association comes out to the fact that it makes it relatable. It is an emotional component. The rational is important. But it comes secondly. And all the teens tend to be more engaged by real life stories, or specifically facts and stats. Whereas younger teens, those 11 to 13, responded best to influences of kind of fun events, which makes sense when we look at the different age groups and what the different requirements are. And if you, for teens like yourself, where would you want to see messages like this? Specifically, generally speaking, we're talking about awareness and education messages. 8 out of 10 for the online survey indicated that they would like to see it at school as the preferred context for receiving such messaging. And it's also for the younger ones. If they tend to be younger, it provides a safer, maybe a bit more of a structured environment for engaging with them. But it tends to be visual. It tends to be things that they would want to see. So it's things like social media, on television, on YouTube, on Billboard. So a level of interactivity is the requirement from teens. And there is an aspect here of digital first. So yes, the school is the environment where most of them would like to see it, and yes, it makes sense. They're all in school that we spoke to, but typically there is also a preference for other kinds of aspirations or other kinds of engagements with teens. Only the younger teens are said that they're more open to seeing video games, messaging like this on video games, which is but not strange and kind of expected, but it does mean that there's different kinds of avenues where you can engage with teens, and where they would want to see it. So as an end then to say, what makes young people more likely to drink? And when we ask this of teens, 9 out of 10 indicated that it due to peer pressure. 7 out of 10 for the face-to-face surveys. And this is what they came up with from the reasons that they believe that other people or young people are more likely to drink. Then it becomes a home environment. Specifically seeing family members or adults drinking at home. Almost half of the respondents in the face-to-face survey, and this tends to be higher among younger teens as well. So 60% of 11-year-olds said that this is the reason why, something that will make teens more likely to drink. In the online survey, we also see things like stress or problems in life, specifically for those who already drink and those already in the Northern Cape and the Eastern Cape. Easy access to alcohol was mentioned by 2/3 in online survey, slightly less than half in the face-to-face survey, and it tends to be highest specifically for 75% of those in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal reported that the easy access to alcohol is one of the reasons that teens drink. But typically, it tends to have a social imperative, almost, that from a teen's perspective are the reasons that other teens or they consume alcohol. Inversely, what helps teens avoid drinking alcohol? And whereas peer pressure was the leading contributor that they indicated that drives, or about not forces, but that gives teens reasons to consume alcohol. What we see here is that education, learning about the risks of consuming alcohol, specifically for the younger teens. So 72% of 11-year-olds in this, for the face-to-face survey, said that this will help them avoid drinking alcohol. But then the social or the peer influence comes back again. So on the one hand, you've got peer pressure as a driver of alcohol consumption, and specifically also as a safety net, or as a way to avoid consuming alcohol, was also support from friends and family. Positive role models, fun alcohol-free activities. And for this, specifically, older teens seem to benefit more from role models, particularly seeing positive role models, or more structured activities that is alcohol-free compared to the younger ones. The younger ones tend to focus a bit more about learning the risks of consuming alcohol. And what kind of programs would you like to participate in? So yeah, what we've asked specifically is, if you were to or seen such programs or specific kind of programs, what would you want to see? And typically, girls tend to mention music, dance, or creative arts programs. Not that boys didn't mention it, but it tends to be slightly higher, whereas boys tend to focus a little bit more on sports and recreational activities, also gaming and esports kinds of events. It was more popular with boys, but it's things that are engaging. It's things that are that is based on activities, and these are specific kinds of programs that they would want to have. As they get older, they want to focus specifically also on more leadership or skill building workshops, specifically, as opposed to what we can see among older teens, but also Kemoja participants as well. I'm going to go into this a bit of a summary now as well. So this is quite a busy slide, but I want to spend some time on this. So generally, what we're seeing is that teens are knowledgeable. They understand all the messaging that everyone's talking about. It is, from a cognitive perspective, it is integrated. Teens understand and they know about these risks. So on a rational level, I think we're doing a good job expressing this in schools. The messaging is coming through. The messaging is clear. The messaging is taken up. However, it's not necessarily always landing. With peer pressure, and specifically what we see from a teen's perspective, is that they say that it's a social environment, whether it's at home, whether it's with their peers, whether it's in a social environment, is one of the reasons that teens drink. And we're looking at 1 in 4 for the targeted survey and 12% for the online survey. Recognition is quite high, like we said, 63% for the online survey and 41% that seen that they've seen any kind of or alcohol harm reduction program. And the majority of them saw campaigns at schools, and also spontaneous awareness of aware.org campaigns comes out quite strongly. School remains the main source of recall for the targeted as well as the online survey. And prompted awareness is generally quite high when it comes to the No to Under 18 campaign, because it's almost everywhere. When we look at the specific programs, we see that sports programs such as Alta Sports and United Through Sport are generally effective in keeping teens engaged, helping with things like teamwork, providing structured alternatives, and these tend to focus or resonate more with non-drinkers. So there's a real argument to say, well, do teens participate in these sports programs because they don't drink, or don't they drink because they participate in these sports programs? But generally, what we can glean from this is it seems to be playing a preventative role, more than something that for rehabilitation, for example, which is a separate kind of pillar. So the programs the partners that do work with Aware, we can already see that it, from this perspective at least, that it does change perceptions. It does change the way that teens engage with each other, and also that teens engage with alcohol in general. They show a preference generally for digital first. So media, TV, digital influence. So we probably would want to make sure that these things are also covered. That's where teens are. That's where they are consuming all. That's where they're consuming media. This is the messaging that they get. And we need to consider also that it's not going to be the messaging that we just want. They're going to get messaging from all over the place. They're going to get messaging from other countries. They're going to get messaging from different kinds of role players, and not always the ones that we would want them to see. And generally speaking, what we also see is that peer pressure plays a better role, or bigger role for those who already engaged online compared to those who are not engaged online. So negative messaging in general, when perceived online, is you don't necessarily have the context. So if it happens in a face-to-face or school environment, it's different from when you're alone and you're sitting just with the screen, and there's nothing to really ground these respondents. So that's where peer pressure plays a big role. It's not just in the social environment where kids go after school to, do things necessarily, but it does happen a lot from a digital perspective, and we need to guard against that, because no matter what we do, teens are going to get messaging from all over the place, whether it's at home, whether it's from their peers, and even from digital and social media. Media and communication channels generally play a crucial role. High levels of perceptions that Aware.org programs are seen as helpful, and that it succeeds. Generally, you tend to see better success rates with the web programs or implementing partners already conducting programs. And maybe just to reiterate that, we didn't actually go and search for respondents who participate in these programs. We only went to those geographic areas. So the respondents that we picked up who participated or know someone who participated was a clear indication to us that we're talking to people in the right geography, but it is also integrated in the community. It's not just about the respondents who participate. It's people in the environment to understand what the programs that Aware.org is running. Something like Scheme Psalm's integration of the messaging with a narrative that makes it engaging seems to work well, whereas something like Makers of Tomorrow has lower visibility, because it tends to be a bit more focused specifically, and it tends to be more specific kind of campaigns targeted to teens. But overall, what we want to say is the balance between education and entertainment for teens will be crucial. It's not just about understanding, it's about living almost the messaging and having something that can relate to them. The reason why Aware.org programs work is because it gives information in a fun but also engaging manner, even for those who do not consume alcohol. And if they'd already consume alcohol, it is still relevant to their lives, and they do see the relevance of these campaigns to them, even though they might be consuming alcohol at that point. We've seen the recall, so Scheme Psalm, obviously because of the national reach, and being on television as a higher recall. Also good for the Makers of Tomorrow, considering half of them in the online server, the open sample recalls the campaign. And generally, messaging, it's not some monolithic. Teens are not one monolithic group of respondents. It's younger teens, educational content. Older teens are more influenced by messaging that connect to future aspirations. As they get to that 15, 16, 17-year-old age, they're starting to think about their futures a little bit more. And there it is about more social. Punitive or legal focused messaging resonate more with boys, but they are already the definite risk takers in life. So whereas things like social belonging and self-confidence appeals more to girls. We would argue from this to say that socialization focused programs, including the sports programs or different peer-led initiatives, is a stronger protective buffer compared to education focused alone. I want to reiterate this: education is critical, and it will the preferred context to receive this in school, especially when they're younger, but it's not a sufficient one to drive awareness in education programs. Generally speaking, enhancing digital engagement, reinforcing positive social norms, and combined with existing activities such as sports and other activity-based interventions, does work better than pure education campaigns. Peer-driven advocacy and embedding a alcohol-free lifestyle will also help youth culture to sustain long-term change. And that's it from Frontline Group. Apologies if I took a bit longer. And we're going to go into the Q&A session now, right?
Thank you, Jean, for your presentation. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for your questions. If you have any further questions or queries, please use the chat function. Jean, we do have a few questions that we just need to get through. The first question is, in communities where underage individuals often consume alcohol, often withdrawing from family and engaging in other risky behaviors, according to the research, what activities do you think could help steer them away from it? This is especially important considering the influence of peer pressure, which is an often unavoidable factor.
That's a tricky one, Devashani. It depends on the age to a large extent. So what I believe is that from what we can see is that having friends or operating in a peer environment where drinking or alcohol consumption is not seen as something that's aspirational tends to have a larger impact if combined with education programs. So there are different programs, but not a lot of teens necessarily participate. I love the slide that Mukebe showed that showed the hundreds of thousands of teens already involved in these programs. But it tends to the biggest impact would be seen by doing the multi-pronged approach. So by sustaining the school programs that are being provided, but then also creating social outlets for teens, whether it's on an ad hoc basis, on a regular basis, by providing them with something that's external to that, almost, and not just necessarily filling up the day, but creating something that they can work towards. And I think that's where the aspirational aspects and the social skills in South Africa particularly play a bigger role.
Thank you, Jean. Okay, the next question is, for this research, was research ethical approval obtained from an institution or review board to conduct this research, or was this for evaluation purposes only?
Yep. So we did not do ethics approval or went to IRB for this, partly because of the reason that we are not collecting any information. So at no stage was confidentiality or any perceived harm. And because it's an evaluation, it's more almost a marketing research than it would be social or medical research. So at no stage did we provide any specific influences or specific products, for example. It wasn't medical research. It was really about social imperatives and understanding consumption, understanding perspectives, and understanding perceptions rather than specific interventions. And in that case, it was not necessary to conduct or to look at the potential harm to respondents. We did have a helpline. We did obviously follow up, and we did training with the face-to-face respondents at that point to highlight any issues that occurred. But IRB was not relevant to this research.
Thank you. Were there any statistical analysis provided to show whether significant differences were found between the groups, or was this purely for descriptive purposes and to see differences in a general way?
Due to the way that the sample was set up, we can't directly always do statistical tests because it was different samples, it was different ways of recruiting the respondents, different sampling methodologies. So we did advanced statistics within the group, but we did not do this across the different groupings. So compared the online versus the face-to-face, in the different target markets. It was more for us, and I think it's important to recognize that this was more focused on outcomes. We weren't necessarily going to say this is because there's lots of other research that's being done with the Medical Research Council, etc., WHO, that talks about the incidence of alcohol use. So that was not for us specifically to understand that necessarily, but to understand almost from a marketing and from a program perspective, where does it enable a way? What are the levers that we can push? So our focus was, like I say, specifically more focused on the trying to get to the outcomes of the program as opposed to maybe the reasons for alcohol consumption. That was a secondary focus, and it was more for us to understand the context where the respondents are living in.
Question is, will these results be published in a scientific journal or as a report somewhere to share with other stakeholders?
This will not be maybe just from Frontline's research. We conducted the research. The research, at the end of the day, and we believe very strongly in transparency, this belongs to aware.org. So from a research perspective, I don't think this is something that we did for a practical purposes. So I wouldn't put this in an academic kind of journal, but I think from a aware perspective, this is research that belongs to you, and it belongs to the members, and it belongs to the organization. And the organization will be able to use this research in any way that they see fit. Obviously, we would provide input in terms of what's feasible and from a research perspective. But I think it's important that the messaging, even though it's specific to aware, do get communicated outside. And that's part of the reason why we're doing this today, is to also have different kinds of perspectives from different industry players to understand, to also see the input of or the output of what we've done.
Okay, the next question. Do we have any insights into the effect of alcohol brand advertising on underage drinkers?
Not in this research. No. That would be something that's completely different and very much focused. The thing, if we think about it, though, an example, so the No to Under 18 logo is very prominent. So it makes sense, the fact that when we look at these interventions, that where teens are seeing this, and to some extent they would be seeing this on advertising as well. The fact that we're aware that the logo and the understanding of the WARE programs comes up for us was more important than understanding how they perceive advertising. And teens are very much a different kind of breed. So how an 11-year-old versus a 17-year-old will interpret these messaging, whether it's from a producer, whether it's from aware, does have a big influence. So it falls completely outside the scope of this, but it gives us some indication that the messaging that comes with advertising, for example, such as the No to Under 18 logo, that's played a crucial role in awareness among teens of the risks of alcohol. And to understand that there is another component to that. I mean, when I look at some of the open ends, when we ask teens just to comment off the cuff, often they would mention, "Oh, I can see the glass with the line through it." So it's very visible to them, and then it kind of links. It's close to their minds when it comes to alcohol consumption. It's very visible. So I think that's considering the role that it's supposed to play is spot on.
Okay. How important is the teacher in the educational program?
Education, and I've been talking a lot about other aspects, and I don't think education is sufficient. I think education is a necessary component to it. And when we look at, I would argue that when education needs to be in place, especially when from the 11, 12, 13, and even younger, like you said, 9, education is important, but it plays less of a role as it gets older. So just thinking about my own 16-year-old, for example, it used to be 3 years ago, 4 years ago that the teacher knew everything, but now his friends know everything. So I think the role of the teacher decreases over time, and as they get older. And unfortunately, they are more skeptical. They're more skeptical about messaging. They become more skeptical about messaging that originates not from their peers, but originates from authority figures or from outside. Hence, I think the focus would be to say, let's not always look at teens as one group and understand that they've got different needs at different stages in their lives. And as they get older, that they become almost more concerned with their own well-being, and maybe we can even say self-absorbed when it comes to teenagers. But that's the kind of messaging that makes more sense for them. Something that they will enable them to be better adults or better older teens, compared to just the education. And education needs to be in place. And teachers, we know, play an important role. The school system plays an important role, and not just schools, but also I would think religious organizations, churches, etc., the community. When we talk to people in the implementing partners, there's often a need to say, involve the community, involve more than just the teens, because it's not just fair to place the responsibility on one shoulder, i.e. the teens or its schools or this or that or that, but teens, and this is from a teens perspective. This is not what we ask. You could also speak to parents about this, but this is what they say, is that the things need to be in place, not just at school, but in other areas as well.
Okay, the next question is, do you think that we should have more messaging around the alcohol packaging for users and TV for everyone? Because often alcohol is glamorized.
Yeah, well, it's very difficult for me to comment on that. I would think yeah, I'm sorry, I wouldn't be able to comment based on this, on the research at this stage. Yeah, I wouldn't, unfortunately.
Thank you. Was the influence of limited safe drinking at home with parents looked at?
No, no, not at all. No, not at all. We look. I mean, at the end of the day, the focus, if we could, we would have asked a lot of more questions. But if we link that back to the proportion of teens who say that the causes, from their perspective, or some of the causes, um, is also seeing adults drinking at all, specifically for younger ones. I think that is something that came out. For all the teens, it's not as important, but at no stage did any of the open ends or the comments come up to talk at supervised drinking or supervised alcohol consumption at any point. So it's not something that came up, and it's not something that was mentioned in the research at that point. What we do see, however, is that younger teens are more concerned about seeing adults in their home environment drinking, and seeing this as one of the reasons why other teens and they to consume alcohol.
Okay. On the point of alcohol being easily accessed by teens, do we know the access points?
No, we did not know. We did not ask that in this case. What we do know is that when they do consume alcohol, that it tends to be with friends. And I always use the example of behind the fietsloos or behind the thing. And our teens are. So for us, I think it's more important not to understand at this stage, because where they get access to the alcohol, because this was not the point of what we're trying to do, but where they do consume alcohol. And if they do consume alcohol more in a social environment, that's typically where we need to look at it. The peer influences and what teens specifically are doing after school, what they're doing when they're going away to parties. So I don't know where they get this. I don't know where they got the alcohol from, if they're 11 to 17-year-old. The fact that about half of them indicated that it's seeing that it happens at home. And maybe just to keep this in mind, when we went to the implementing partners, we went to areas that are, I wouldn't say necessarily impoverished, but more difficult social environments. So it tends to be easier to get alcohol in such a situation. But at this point, all that we can say is that when they do consume alcohol, it tends to be more in a peer-led environment than it tends to be in another kind of environment. And it happens at parties and it happens in different places.
Thank you everyone for attending this pivotal webinar and for joining the conversation on underage drinking. We thank you for your participation and your questions. If you have any further questions or queries, you're more than welcome to email any of the aware.org team. And may you have a good day further.
We are aware.org, the custodians of responsible drinking in South Africa. Our mission is simple yet profound: to reduce alcohol-related harm, to safeguard lives, and create a safer tomorrow. Our work is focused on 3 key areas: preventing underage drinking, promoting sober pregnancies, and making our roads safer by eliminating drunk driving. By partnering with implementing partners, experts, and communities, we drive programs that raise awareness and inspire change for all of society. But beyond the numbers, partners, and programs, what we do is about real people and real lives, with every story of change reflecting our mission. Here are some of those stories.
So we teach pregnant mothers that no amount of alcohol at any time of a pregnancy is not good for the fetus. The mother of one of the respondents brought the child for tests and the child was diagnosed with FASD. She fell pregnant again and she joined the program, the Healthy Mother, Healthy Baby program. The child then born with going through this program is now very much differently developed mentally and physically than the other children in the house. With that, I would say that FARS program really has an impact in guiding the mother through her struggles and having a healthy baby.
I'm moving in traffic and I'm stopped and I'm told, "Hello sir, you're under arrest." In that moment, a lot goes through my head. I was tasked with the simple thing to just take my partner together with my daughter there to Rembert, and all of a sudden I'm being arrested. It's not a sight I'd like her to see of me. So I'm in the cell. I remember I was speaking to a certain policeman, and in the conversation, somehow she said, but then there's a NICRO program that you can do instead of going to court. Through the NICRO program, I was able to learn a lot of things with regard to my behavior, my psychological behavior, my emotional well-being at the time while on the road. It's one of those things where if more people did it, then we'd have more people being responsible on the road. If we are informed and taught to do better, we can do better.
Just starts with one class to the second one, to the third one, to you buying it for yourself. And then after buying for yourself, where you have to crave, your hands are shaking and you just want another drink, you just want another bottle. The only danger that actually made me feel like now I've hit rock bottom when I was raped by 2 men. After that whole incident, that's where I went to drinking more. I always blamed my parents for not seeing that I was intoxicated, and when I wanted help, it was very difficult for me because now I'm like, I've been going through so much and you guys never saw what is going on in my life. At school, they tested me and they were like, there's something up with your behavior, what's going on with you? They showed me that they can give me help by giving me a SANCA letter. And then they explained to me the process of SANCA, and then that's where I was like, this is what I need. At that moment in time when I was very addicted and I was in that situation and depressed, I was very suicidal. My social workers and the people that worked there actually helped me understand myself more and show myself love. From my social worker especially, he actually made me feel amazing. He made me feel like a person again.
Before I started being a coach, I lost my mom. Now, having to do the job that I do, let me just say it gave me a reason to live again. Knowing that to them, they appreciate each and everything that we do. If the parents couldn't do it, we are gonna do it. So I see diamonds in them. I see them representing where we come from.
These stories are just a glimpse of the countless lives we've touched. None of this would be possible without the steadfast support of our members and partners. This culture of responsibility is a shared journey, and it requires the whole of society, every one of us, be it individuals, families, communities, and corporates.